Capturing attention with visuals is fundamental for us environment artists, and one brilliant way to do so is by adding movement into our work. For our next workshop, we welcome Zehra Khan, lead environment artist at Fortis Games, to the stage. Zehra has worked on multiple titles, including Star Trek Legends, Vikings Valhalla, and Tomb Raider Reloaded, just to name a few. She not only brings her extensive knowledge as an experienced environment artist with a background across multiple fields to the table, but also her experience as being a teacher at Think Tank Training Center. So please welcome Zehra Khan to Beyond Extent.
Hey everybody, so nice to see everybody here. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen just in a sec. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see my introduction page. Hi, I'm Zehra. Right now I am in Vancouver, Canada. I work in stylized games mostly, and I started as a junior environment artist, gradually became a senior, and then eventually worked my way up to being a lead environment artist. And I just really like working on stylized games. You can tell by my portfolio, it's like very colorful, and I kind of like started with realism back in the days. But yeah, then eventually you can see the progression. kind of started going to more of a stylized route. Before this, I was actually working as an architect. And it was, I didn't really like what I was doing. I wanted to be very creative and, keep making, beautiful environments that, there's a bit of magic to them. And I felt like architecture was just kind of dry. So that's a bit about me. Okay, and next slide will show you what I am going to be talking about. So my main topic is movement in environments, and this is what I'm going to be mainly focusing on. So I'm going to talk about selecting the right concept, kind of like analyzing what kind of concept you want to make and how you can imagine it coming to life, kind of like breaking down each and every part that you already kind of think of. And then what I did for my latest environment piece was that I used level sequencer in Unreal Engine to kind of animate the windows and some architectural parts of the building. I'm going to talk about camera movements and wind lines. And then after that, I'm going to show a lot of examples of all the other kinds of movements you can do. I will also mention these up front, but then there's just so much you can add. So, I'm going to go over examples. All right. So yeah, movement in environments and bringing your environments to life. All right. So why do you want to add movements in the first place? Firstly, if you want to post your work on LinkedIn or ArtStation or any other platform, anything moving is going to catch the eye. And it's very quick. It happens in a very short amount of time. This is mostly to grab attention to anybody who's kind of browsing and sees your work, and it's moving. So that's the biggest thing is it's moving, is going to catch the attention. The other thing is it helps to bring a story into your work. And that is one of the things that you must have heard many, many times, that having a story is so important. Not just kind of making things for the sake of making it, hey, here's a environment and here's some buildings and that's it, and this is how I did the modeling, everything. But no, people actually look for creativity, and they want to see how you added a bit of a story element to it. So having some movement kind of tells a bit more of the story. The other thing is it ties the whole environment together. So anything that lies in your environment is all going to sit together in one cohesive space. It's going to exist there. It has a background there. It has history there. And it feels more connected. So there are so many different types of movements, and I'm not going to continue with these boring slides with just words, because I actually want to show examples. But just overall, there's movement in materials. There's movement in the keyframes that you can add, and the level sequencer. That's how I did it. And then there's like ambient movement in particles and in weather systems. When I look at different environments, especially like done in Unreal Engine, like the first thing that really catches your eye is that it's moving. Not only is the camera kind of like panning in, now this is some really nice work done by Vincent. His camera movement is like very slow, it kind of like eases in, but at the same time you have this nice windmill moving at the back. And you have the flag moving, there's some birds, and it's very soft. It's adding a bit of story to the environment. And it's something that if it was just all static and if the camera was just moving in, it would feel not as alive, or not, it doesn't remind you of a game, because like in games things are moving. And then you can continue with like still shots. So this was one of the really nice stylized environments. And then probably when he selected this concept, he was like, okay, there's a fan here, there's a flag here, there's cloth here. Like look at the different materials that exist in your environment and imagine how those would be moving. You don't need to draw too much attention to anything. It's kind of like bringing everything together. The other example is like this one. This is not a 3D environment, it's a concept. And I feel like this one is, I can already see the movement happening in here, right? So the grass is kind of like swaying in the wind. You have some little sheep. You have these birds flying in the distance. You have these clouds. You can even add mist, kind of like rolling through the environment. You don't even need to move your camera in the scene. Even if it was just a still shot and these little things were moving in your environment, it would just add so much. Okay, so this piece. You must have seen this one. This one's really popular on ArtStation. And this is all about movement. Now here, it's not as subtle, but the thing is your environment is very simple actually. There's a windmill, there's a field of tulips, there's a house, and there's some clouds. But it just really catches the eye. And it's all about movement really, because like everything here is moving. There's like beautiful tulip fields, and this is all, I think he did it all procedurally. And then you can see that not only are they moving, there's a very slight color variation tint happening. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see if you look at one place, it changes the color ever so softly. What I really like about this is that it brings the environment to life in a very soft and subtle way. So definitely look at a lot of examples on how people add movement into their scenes. And then this is my profile. I started adding movement in my own pieces, but there are a few examples of like other ways you can even think of adding movement, especially if you worked in a gaming, if you worked on a game and you want to show what you worked on, like this one, I just added like firstly a video on what the game's about, and it is a lot happening because this is like a game trailer. But then you kind of like can take videos of what you did in the game and show what's happening, because it really captures like the game essence. So now this is all something that you would do in the studio, because like it's hard to kind of do this on your own because it's like an actual game it's running, there's just too much to figure out. But say you don't have that luxury and you want to kind of work on your own piece. So just adding like very soft, this is when I first started adding movement to my pieces, like little leaves blowing in the wind and then the whole thing kind of rotating. And I pushed it more with this scene because it's like you're kind of like zooming into the scene, but then your focus is kind of drawn with the wind blowing in. There's like soft movements of the flags. Not only that, but there's very soft movements happening in these little lanterns. And it's very soft, very subtle. You may not even notice it, but it kind of ties the whole environment together. And then with this scene, I added more particle effects near the ground. So it's like sand kind of blowing, there's wind lines, and then changing your camera angle and showing different animations happening in your environment really add a lot just like little movements, like, your plant's kind of like the pot's kind of moving in the wind, the doors opening and closing, but very softly. And the camera movements are also very soft. And this one, again, I was I was obviously very tempted to keep animating the windows in like the most drastic way, like, oh, so cool, I have so many windows, I can animate all of them. But no, I had to really tone it down and keep it very soft, because the focus again is like showing the whole environment, not just animation. All right, so yeah, so these were the different types of movements, and there's different ways you can even add them. There's just so many things you can add, but I'm just going to go over like a few things. Before that, things to consider. When you're selecting a concept, it's really nice to already kind of visualize what you are thinking of doing. Just like what I mentioned when I was showing examples of the concept, like how would you imagine it all coming to life, not just like a specific animation that you want to animate. And then usually this is done at the end. This is more like a polish phase, because like your focus is like making the meshes, the models. So this is usually done at the very end, and it kind of like, I would really recommend not to skip this step, because it can be very tempting to like just push out your environment and get it all done, like just quickly put it on ArtStation. But really good idea to take a week and just polish and add animation. And then I mentioned this as well before, but be very subtle with your movements. But at the same time, they should be enough so that they're noticeable, but in a very soft way. Sometimes I see people can get a bit too drastic with the animations, like the wind is going, like it's at a very high intensity, or the camera is moving so fast, and it kind of like takes away from all the hard work you've done. So just remember to keep it soft, subtle, and meaningful. So the latest cactus piece that I did was based on GXY. Like their art is just amazing. I just love all the architecture work that they do. And when I looked at this concept, I just knew right away that these windows would play a really big part in like movement, because they're all kind of pivoted. Plus you're in a desert, because it looks like a Eastern inspired building with some sand. So, I'm already thinking about what environment this lives in. And, once you think about the environment, you can think about other things like the particle effects, the weather, and it just kind of ties the whole environment together. So first thing, I was like, okay, I know that these things are going to be moving. Just kind of like highlighting them, like for sure. Like I said, this is usually done in the polish, like you're actually animating these in the polish stage. But it's good to kind of know beforehand when you're selecting your concept, like what things are going to be moving. Because the reason I say that is because these are all not just, this movement is not going to be coming from the material, but it's going to be coming from the mesh itself. And when you're building these meshes, you want to ensure that the pivots of these meshes are located in the right locations. Because it would really be sad that you make everything and you're like, okay, I know these are moving, but then the pivots are all in different locations. And in Unreal Engine, especially if you're making a demo reel, sometimes people just put all their pivots at 0, 0, because it's very easy to export into Blender. But in this specific case, definitely I had to make sure the pivots of all these meshes were in the right location. And then, so the second thing was like, I know for sure there's going to be some dust and some sand moving. And what is going to be causing that? Of course, wind. So if these things are moving, it would be really nice to actually show the wind. And especially with stylized, you can kind of get away with like adding big chunky wind lines. But if your scene's more realistic, you can think of adding more realistic thinner lines, but just something to show that there is a reason why these things are moving. And then last but not least, but this part was tricky for me, but the ambience and the surroundings that are also moving. So in my scene, the clouds are moving very softly in the background. And because there were no clouds in this concept, this idea came to me at the very end when I was when everything was done, I was like, oh, I want to add a sky, I want to add clouds. And I was like, okay, I don't want them to be stationary. So again, ideas may come to you later down the road, but it's good to kind of think beforehand, and also just kind of take a screenshot and put it in PureRef and kind of remind yourself like, yeah, I need to make this thing moving, because it could be possible that you forget and then you publish it on ArtStation and it's too late. So yeah, just good idea to break down your concept. So yeah, like I said, when you are adding your pieces that need to be moving, make sure that the pivots are in the correct location, because I'll show you in a bit, but I animated most of these in the level sequencer. So I had to make sure that the pivots were in the right place, and there were times where even I made something and it would just kind of like clip through the mesh. So you have to make sure that these things are, when you're gray blocking, that you know roughly how it's going to move. Just try it out in Blender, like, oh, it's going to move like this. Just make sure it's not clipping through. Because that actually happened to me. I was like modeling this nice window, and then I didn't really actually think of rotating it, and it was clipping through your mesh. So just make sure that you just do the movements in Blender to know what you're going to do. So I'm just going to move to Unreal Engine because I have a scene set up. This was the scene that I did. And you can see that there's a bunch of level sequencers I added. And right now, the only thing that's actually moving in my scene is this wind. But the rest was all kind of done in the level sequencer because I wanted the movements to follow and kind of behave in a way where my camera is. But I'll show you real quick how I set it up. So it was in this scene that I broke everything down. So I just brought everything here. So I'm pretty sure everybody knows this, but when you want to take a video recording of your scene, you need to make sure that you have a level sequencer in your scene. So I already kind of created one here. It's beyond demo level. And then there's like a sequencer that I added. And so to make sure that you have this level sequencer, you have to make sure that you click this and add level sequence. This creates a new level sequence. Let's call it demo layer 2, just for the sake. And what it does is it opens up this nice time graph where you can add your camera, you can add animations and everything. What people usually do is they first add a camera in, and you want to track your camera in the scene. So when you click track, you can do actor to sequencer and then add your cine camera actor. So now you've added your camera into your level sequence. And you can see that it's a bit blurry. Nothing's happening, obviously, because I haven't moved my camera yet. Then you can also increase the time by increasing these seconds here. So now you kind of have more. And by dragging this, you extend the life of how long you want the video to be, or your rendering to be. But you can see that it's a bit blurry here. It's because by default, my camera has a very low aperture, and things are going to look blurry. If you want, you can, if you like this blurriness, if you say like, hey, I want my rendering to start with like the cinematic look where things are looking a bit blurry, you can always keyframe this, or you can even make it lower if you want. So say 2, and you keyframe it, and just drag your slider across and keyframe it at a higher aperture, so 5. So you can see that it's a bit clear. Let's just do 6, so it's like very clear. But in the time between 0 and 30, it's going to, you can see that it kind of starts blurry and then it becomes sharp. So if I hit play, it becomes sharp. And if you want to exaggerate this even more, you can make this 1. So now it's really blurry. And it takes some time before it starts to become sharp. And I usually like doing this for, if you're switching shots or you're kind of transitioning between cameras. I really like adding that like blurry effect because it gives this more cinematic feel. The other thing is that when you move your camera, it's actually moving in the Cinecamera actor. And it's kind of great to know. I mean, I find this very useful because this is how I move my camera and animate it moving into your scene. So in order to track your transformation of the camera, you make sure that you have your transform node here selected. Sorry, not node, but this option here. And just add keyframe. So what it does is, at this point, it's added a keyframe as to where my camera is in the position, in the workspace. And then you can move your camera. So before you move your camera, because if you move it and you click this, it's going to go back. Before you move your camera, just know where roughly you want to have the end position of the camera. I usually do it at the end. So here I'm going to zoom in. It kind of zooms in like this. I'm going to add a bit of a tilt, and then you add a keyframe. So now you have your camera movement selected. And be very careful when you're adding your camera movements, because even right now I feel like this might be a bit fast, especially you can see like, oh, it's, and it stops. So it can be very fast as well. So always good to keep your movements very subtle. So let's say I just don't want to zoom in that much. Do this. And slowly zooms in. Now there's one thing that I noticed with Unreal Engine, and I don't know if anybody's ever come across this, but I really don't like how it eases in. There's like an ease in animation. So you can see that it starts to roll in slowly. And then once it ends, there's like an ease out and it's like rolls in softly. I really dislike that. So I found a way to change that. You can actually select this and click linear. What this does, that it removes that annoying ease in and ease out effect that you never really wanted. So I'm going to do that here as well because I really don't like this cubic ease in effect. So what this does, it keeps it very clean and simple, and I use this for my latest portfolio piece. But you can see that in my Elf Mansion project, I have this like ease in effect because I didn't really know you could change this to linear. So now when I hit play, see, it doesn't ease in anymore. It's like, okay, you're going, and then it stops. There you go. It's like, it's more sharp. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like very subtle. It starts and it stops. Whereas with Cubic, it was kind of like easing into the roll. Okay, so now we have your camera set up. The other thing you want to do is, now you have to make sure that this animates. Now it's interesting because I have a lot of these little plants on my window, and I don't want to combine everything because, you know, it's going to be a mess if you group everything in Blender, bring it in, and you're like, oh, I want to shift the location of this succulent inside Unreal Engine, and everything is combined, and it's annoying. Luckily, you can create an actor where everything is parented under the same actor to your main window. And I made sure that my pivot point is exactly in the center as to how I would want this to rotate. So to create an actor, you go to Basic, Actor, and I've already created one here called Succulent. And everything is lying underneath this actor. So I placed my holder, my mesh, and all my succulents. But let me just make a new one because I just want to show exactly how I did this. So I'm going to unparent it by dragging it out into the folder, and let's just delete this. Oh, unfortunately it's part of the sequencer, but I'll just make a new one. And let's just drag this into my succulent folder, and let's call this new actor. So by default, this actor is located here in your space. It's located at a random place. What I like to do is I like to zero it out first. And what you want to do is make sure that your actor and the main window that you want to animate has the same location. So what I do is that I copy the values from my window onto this actor, and it's going to move right in the center where you want it. So go here, right click, copy, and then click your actor, right click, paste. So now it's exactly where I want it, because you will be using this position to animate your window. After that, what you can do is, I'm going to delete this now because everything is kind of parented to this actor and it's part of this keyframe. So what I will do is I will drag everything. So select everything, drag everything into your actor. And that way everything is parented. So I have already kind of done this with my succulent actor. So here I'm going to drag everything here. Oops. And this one is located right in the center, just like that previous actor. And you hit E, you can see that now everything is moving exactly how you want it to be. And then if you want to add this, now you want to animate this in your level sequence, just like you animated your camera, you just simply need to click track, actor to sequence, and then you add your succulent actor. There you go. Now this is part of this rendering that you are creating with this camera. Anything you animate in here will show in this camera. So if you go back to your start position where your camera kind of starts, say you want to rotate this and have like a nice soft rolling motion, all you do is so let's first keyframe our starting point, because that's something that's very easy to forget. Because say you like your starting position, like I like it the way it is right now, add a keyframe. Okay, so before you do that, you need to make sure you have a transform. By default, it might not have anything, and you just hit plus, track, and then transform. And when you open your transform, you can see it actually has your location, your rotation, your scale, and I personally like to just do the whole transform, but in this case, we are just really changing your rotation. So if you want, you can just track that. But just to keep it simple, I will just track my transform, and you just add a starting keyframe. And then I select our actor again. And let's say at a certain point when the camera is here, it's moving just a bit. So let's say it's moving down first. So, sorry, first make sure you drag this. And then let's say you want to move this down first. Transform. And then after a while, it goes up again. And then drag that. So now let's see how our animation looks. Oh, and you can see that one succulent is moving because I did not take it. It's still part of that actor. So you can just simply drag this out. Just drag it out. So now it won't move when this is moving. Now you want to continue this animation, but you don't want to keep animating. Yes, pause. So you don't want to keep animating this back and forth, or I do recommend adding a bit of variation in how it moves. Otherwise, it looks too monotonous. But say you really like how this looks, and you're just a bit short on time, and you just want to copy paste the values. You can just simply, so it starts like this, goes down, goes up. And the next one, you want it to go down just like it did before. You just do Control C and then Control V. But make sure you have your timeline bar selected while you do that, because it's going to copy exactly where you have this bar. So let's look at it again. Goes down, goes up, goes down. There you go. And then you can just keep copy pasting those values. The other thing you can also do is select this option that shows the animation keys. And if you select circular and actor, you can kind of see what the graph looks like. You can see that it has like a graph that shows that it's going up, it's going down, and then it kind of plateaus after that. If you want, you can just make sure that it cycles by selecting your values here. And sorry, not cycle, but oscillate, ping pong. What it does is that now all of your values here are kind of like having like a ping pong effect. So it kind of mirrors the animation. So it starts, it goes down, goes up, and then right about here, it starts to mirror exactly what you just did before. And it helps to keep things very easy, and it just can continue forever. But I just find this very useful because it's going to seamlessly repeat the animation, even if though like your up and your down might vary a bit. You can tell like here it kind of like isn't going down as much. So let's see. So yeah, even though I didn't add any keyframes here, it's just gonna keep going until obviously your time, the time ends. And then if you want to make sure that your last keyframe is perfectly matching your end keyframe, what I like to do is like, so say it goes down, it goes up. You want this position to be the same as this position. So I'm gonna come here and delete this, go back to this, Control C, and then go back to your first keyframe and Control V. Now you have the exact same position. So now when it loops, it doesn't look weird. Oh, actually, no, it definitely cut. So here, this is where you want, where it ends, because here it ends at a random spot. You want to make sure that it starts exactly where you want it to be. But here's a good thing about this is you can continue your time as much as you want, and you don't even need to worry about like all these animation details, because again, we're not animators, we're environment artists, and I can spend hours talking about animation, but in the end, you just want to show a quick animation that lasts enough in your camera rendering to convey the idea that this object is moving. So even if it doesn't oscillate or loop perfectly, it's completely fine because this is not your role. You're just kind of adding a bit of animation to your environment as long as the camera is there. Okay, so let's see how this looks with our camera actually moving in the scene. So this camera kind of ends very early on. So what you can do is by dragging your camera, you are lengthening the time as to how long it takes to zoom in. So let's see how this looks. And if you press G, it kind of like hides all these icons. So let's see, zooms in slowly. And that's where you would want to just cut it. So it doesn't matter how long it continues. You probably want to add another camera transition. So we can even do that here. So let's go back to our scene here and add another camera. Cinematic, cine camera. And let's make sure it's a different angle this time. Let's say you want to do like a bit of a close-up. Might be easier if I actually just edit this in the camera mode. There you go. So you want to do like a close-up up here. So now, because we added all our animation in just like this part, you can see that if I play using my second camera, it will still show what I've animated, which is really useful because this is the good thing about level sequences. You can actually see how everything is animating, but from different angles. You don't need to constantly keep animating again and again, which can be quite frustrating. But if you're feeling extra ambitious and you're like, hey, I kind of like that animation I did, but I want to try something new, you can also add a new level sequence and do everything I did here again. Even change the location of some things. Like say you didn't actually like the way the succulents are facing, you just add a new level sequence, make a new camera animation, and animate this a bit differently and do a cut. So that's how I did my scene. Like I did custom animate pieces to specific camera locations, just because I feel like that you have a short amount of time to convey the best. So you want to make sure that it's curated to look the best in that short amount of time you have. So for example, say I want to change the way that the succulents look here. Now, since I changed the location of these, if I go back to my other camera, you'll see that they moved here. But what you can do is you can create a new level sequence and kind of add these into your final rendering. And then you can kind of combine everything in Adobe Premiere and then put that up. So this was more about the swinging motion and how you can have this loop in, have this play while you have your render sequence playing. But now this gets more technical. Like say you like, okay, but it doesn't play when I play the game. It's just there. Oh, actually I did. So I should have deleted that, but I did animate this in the blueprint as well. So that's when you play the game and it kind of shows in the game as well. What I did was that I have a blueprint here, open level blueprint. So what this does is it takes your level sequence, and what you're doing is you're saying that, hey, I actually want this to play. So it's actually very easy. When you open your blueprint, usually it's gonna look like this. It's gonna look like this. And there's going to be nothing selected, nothing's going to be playing. If we hit play, nothing's going to be playing. So if I do compile, let's just do save, hit play, nothing's playing. That's because you don't have your blueprint set up. This is just something extra you can do. You don't necessarily need to do this. Say you want to show your scene within game and you're like, oh, but nothing's moving, and I just want to make sure that whatever I animated in my level sequence kind of shows when you hit play. So what you want to do is select your level sequence. So have it selected, and then do right click and create reference to beyond the level sequence. So this is a level sequence that is going to create a reference. Next thing you do is that you just drag out the node and you play sequence player. So what this does is it will take your level sequence and essentially just play it. And what this node does is it tells you when do you want this to play, and you want it to play at the beginning when you play the game. So all you do is you kind of like drag this node into here, and then just to compile, save. And now when I hit play, it's going to play that level sequence that I made in game. So yeah, that's how you can get it to play within your game as well. But then again, just an extra step. You don't really need to do this, but just good to know for creating levels that you made within, animations that you made in your scene and you want to like kind of run through it. So that kind of goes over moving parts in your scene. Again, you can keep doing that with more complicated meshes. Here, I kind of have everything individually set up. So if I want, I can rotate this, add this actor, rotate this. So just make sure that you have the right name, add that into your level sequence, and then just keyframe, and that's what I did. I just keyframed everything, and then you hit play, and they all kind of like move slowly within your environment. The other thing I did was I made sure that I had an actor for this little guy here as well. So this actor would share the same pivot point as my cactus. And what I did was I just very softly kind of like had it rolling in the wind like this. And it's actually a lot of fun. Like you kind of keep going through the objects in your scene. You're like, what else can I animate? Maybe you can animate this little like segment here. It's like, oh, this is moving a little bit in the wind. Just add keyframes and you test it out. So that's pretty much it, like for moving objects in your scene. Apart from that, I had wind in my scene. Now this is a particle effect, and there's a lot of tutorials on how to make stylized wind, and it all kind of like starts from, I think, one YouTube tutorial. It's like the classic one in French. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it has like that classic swirl, the round swirl. So in my other scene, I actually did that particle effect for this scene. If it loads. Okay. So this scene has the swirly effect. And what I did was that I changed the direction of this wind. So I didn't just place it like flat up top, but it was actually like rotated in. So it's kind of like going through the valley. And that's another cool thing you can do, is you can change the direction of wind, kind of like directing your eye to look at a certain point. In this scene, it was more flat because it's kind of like going this way, it's going sideways because I wanted to animate the sand rolling in the scene. Now, this particle effect is, let me just select it. It's basically this wind Niagara system. And it's a lot to go through here. And again, I'm not a VFX artist, so it's great to just kind of see the tutorial, but I'll just show you what exactly is happening. So there are three meshes that are being drawn into this particle system. Each system has a mesh renderer, which you can see here. You can drag in whatever mesh you want. So if I change this, it's going to start populating that mesh. This wind line is just a very, very simple static mesh, and I have it open in Blender here. So this is the static mesh. Honestly, it's a little bit high poly even for, you know, how many times it appears on the screen. It's, let's see. Well, that's not bad, but you know, it's just your demo reel. It's okay if it's a bit high poly. You kind of want things to look really good. So it's really just like a triangle shape that I extruded and just followed along like a nice curve. And then what people do is usually they add like let's delete these spaces. And what they do is you can kind of just have any shape you want. So they added that swirly effect. And then you can also scale it down. So from a distance, it kind of adds a texture on this wind shape. And obviously you don't want it to look too blocky, so let's just add a bit more. So you can make any shape you want, and it's going to load that in. What I like about this is that once you make one, you just need to copy paste it, make another, and then this way you're loading in a shape that's a little bigger. So Wind 2, let's say, has a little bit of a bigger shape because you don't want to just keep loading in the same shape again and again. So that's what I did. I had like these small lines, and you had like these big lines kind of like streaking across. I did not add any leaves in here, but if you wanted to add leaves, you kind of copy paste it again, and then you can add in your leaf. But in this particular one, I had none, so I just made sure that it was not spawning for this one. But in the other one here, I had like my leaf shape. And then obviously in each setting, you can decide how fast it spawns, what is the spawn rate. So if I change this to, let's say, like right now it's 4. If I change this to 10, it's going to just spawn at a higher rate. So there'll be more lines. So now there's like lots more lines appearing. You can see that they're spawning a lot of them. And same goes with this one. It's always a good idea to have like a bit of variation in the spawn rate, your particle size, like how big you want your mesh to look, what is your initial particle size. So if say you want like different, I don't know, let's think, maybe like water splashes or little like dust particles, and you want the size to kind of change over time, or you want it to scale over time, you can change your scale, the starting scale. And what else? Yeah, and then this graph kind of shows at what rate it starts spawning. So it starts spawning, and then after a while you want it to plateau, because you don't want it to forever keep spawning. Because if this line was just going infinitely up, it would just keep spawning more and more wind. And what else? This one, same thing. Here you can see that there's a box size as well. So it spawns within a box. So it won't spawn anywhere here or like here. It's just going to spawn within that box. And it's useful to have like a certain box size as to how much you want those wind lines to spawn. And then for your leaves, same thing. You also have your lifetime limit. So again, like there's a lot of things you can do. You can even just adjust the color here if you're too lazy and you just have like a blank texture. You can change your color. But yeah, like definitely look at tutorials for this. And once you have this set up, you can use this for future projects that you make, and that's the best part. And all this kind of like link the tutorial you followed. Like I definitely linked like, hey, I use this wind system. When I broke it down in ATLB, I was like, yeah, I actually followed this YouTube tutorial, and it's not something I just made up on my own. Same goes with my sand one. All right, yeah, so we have the sand kind of flowing in the ground here, and this, again, I followed a tutorial for this. It wasn't something that I made from scratch, but I made it from scratch, but it wasn't something that I knew like beforehand magically on how to make this sandstorm. However, when you're following tutorials, you can always add your own twist to it, because the one I followed was this one. And in here, he kind of goes over how you can add sand blowing through. Highly recommend you check it out. It's painful, it looks scary. It's like a long video on how you can add these things, but it's well worth doing just because you can reuse them so many times in your projects. And at the same time, you just need to follow through. You don't need to know all the technical details. Again, very useful if you do know the technical stuff, but just knowing that you can add these little things and you can reuse them in many ways really adds a lot. So in this tutorial, I believe the one he added, he had his own mask for the sand blowing, and I just made my own because I was like, okay, I want mine to be very soft. I don't want my sand to be blowing really fast. You can change, once you know how to build it, you can change the values and customize it as to how you want it to look. And then what else? There was also like little particles of sand blowing through. So can't really see it much because it's like so subtle. I didn't want to take away from the sand, but I think it's this one, the sand blowing. It's in here. So you can see there's like a bit of sand particles flying through your scene. Again, this is actually your leaf. So what I did was that I followed the leaf one and I removed the wind and everything. So if I click this, I just removed all the wind and everything, and I took my leaf and I just made a very small circle. And that's all it is. Like I just edited the same particle system because I was like, oh yeah, I can actually reuse this particle system I made and add a bit of life to my scene here. So yeah, and then you can change the rate and customize it however you want. Really worth adding to your scene. Another thing is like these clouds in the distance. These are all planes. I painted these in Photoshop, and what they do is like if I open the level sequence, I think it's this one. Yeah. So you can see that I added like lots of little animations here. And I drag the slider. It's like, oh, okay. So this was really based on my camera. You can see that these ones move for a certain type of camera, and then I'm like, okay, no, now I want my camera to look here, and I want this door to move in a certain way. And you can kind of always change how that looks. But if you can see, yeah, because I broke it down into many parts. So that's what I was saying is like you can have multiple level sequence. So here in this one, I had my clouds kind of moving. So what I did was, again, I just keyframe these ones at the back and move them very softly. And you can see I did it for the shot that was this one. So I was like, okay, for sure I want my clouds to move in this background here. So again, you can see the wind's blowing, and then I wanted my clouds to move ever so softly at the back. But when I moved these clouds and I added it to the main shot, it was just so, I didn't want it to be so overpowering. So I had to move these slowly just for this scene. And then for this particular shot, because I'm like, no, I want the wind to feel a little more intense, and it's getting a little more windy here, I made a new level sequence and I moved the clouds at a faster rate. So you can really customize what shot and what kind of story you want to tell in each part of your camera shot. Yeah, and if you have water in your scene, if you have different materials in your scene, these can all be done through water effects. You can see I did add some like shadow casters here, because imagine this scene is going to be really, if you make it in a game, it's going to be very big. There's going to be different trees, they're going to be it's going to extend infinitely, but you don't have that much time. So always good to just add like cues, for example, just to show like, hey, actually this area is shaded. So yeah, like that's pretty much how I added all the animation. Another thing is the flag animation. So let's look at that. So this is my flag animation. What you have to do for making a flag is super simple, but when you're making your flag, you have to make sure you have enough vertices, because this distortion is happening in your mesh. So let's say you have this flag shape. And say you just bring this into your engine, it's not going to work because it doesn't have enough vertex animation to make sure that it distorts in your mesh. So what I did was that I made sure that I had enough information, enough vertices in my flag to ensure that there is enough information for it to distort. So let's see, like just add some more vertices here. I'm doing a very like rough job. Ideally, I should have added these when this was still a cube, but because it's a triangle, it won't let me. So you want enough information, like that's how much I added into my scene, into my flag, to ensure that when the vertex displaces, so the vertex is going to displace like this. So it's going to go like this. And you want to make sure that it doesn't break when it's being displaced in your material. So in the flag one, what I did was that I took the local position of the flag and I masked my R, which is like your X value, because you want your vertices on your X to displace. And you divide it by a constant. Again, I watched a tutorial for this. This wasn't, again, something I came up on my own, but I can just kind of go through like what's exactly happening. You divide your wave size. So the reason you divide things is to lower the value, because sometimes a value is just so high and it's so extreme. You want to divide it by a value to bring down that number, and that's what the divide node does. And then you want to add a time value. So like according to the time spent, you want the wave size to move. And you want a sine wave. So the sine wave is, anybody who's taken math, it looks like an oscillation wave. And this is pretty much what you need, like for anything that's moving up and down. It's perfect for the flag. And after that, you want to multiply that with the wave direction. Now, I'm not just moving the verts in my z value. I'm also, sorry, not just in the z, but also in the x. So you kind of want to, sorry, I think this is the y and the z. So you kind of want to make sure that the movement's happening on both sides. And you are multiplying that with your sine wave. So the wave is moving not just in one direction, but in your z as well. And at the same time, you want to multiply a mask to make sure not the whole flag is not moving, because at the end of your flag, you probably don't want this part to move. So what this is doing is that it's masking out that area to make sure that anything closer to x is not moving. And let's multiply that in and then add another divide, because if I don't divide it, it's going to make sure the sine wave is going to be really large again. So you divide it again and then plug it into your world position offset, which is basically how your grass shader works as well. When you're adding the simple grass nodes, you pretty much plug it in the world position offset. And that's it. And that's how the flag material is moving here. So if I just hit F, that's what's happening here. It's not just moving in your X, but in both directions. Your Z, a bit in Z and a bit in X. So that was for the flags. Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. I'm just gonna go over like people's examples of like what I really think was a great job in movement. So this piece is really well done. It was actually done by a student, and it was a group project. I think it was a group project because there was like lots of people working on it. But it's just so well done. There's like movement in the flies are moving around, the drops are coming down the petals, there's like mesh deformation happening. Not only that, it drops down and it goes into the water and there's a splash. Like there's just so much attention to detail that I think is so beautifully done. Especially for student work, I think this is just really nicely done. But again, it's a group project. It's hard to do everything on your own, but just see how much it adds. And then there's also rain happening. It's bringing so much life to your scene. Definitely worth putting in the effort of adding rain and weather into your scene. Also, this camera angle is just so nice. Like think about, when you look at movies, think about how they draw attention to environments. Like really pay attention to movies, because that's where cinematography comes in, is because you want to tell a story through your environments, and not everybody knows how to portray that through your camera movements. But just changing the angle like this just really adds so much to the environment. In this one, I particularly like how you have the foreground kind of blurring in at the front. Again, adds a lot of like beautiful movie-like touch to your scene. Same with this one. You can see the camera's actually on the diagonal here. And then there's like fish moving, there's water flowing, there's like something going on here. There's just so much to look at. But at the same time, if you look at it overall, it's very soft. Like nothing is like too distracting. These people aren't moving that much. This butterfly that comes in is like very blurry, moves in and becomes blurry. So I'm not taking up too much distraction. So yeah, this was one of the examples that I thought was just really well done, well put together, and really caught my attention in terms of movement, telling a story, different camera angles. The other one, this one is done by an artist who works for that game company. I don't know if anybody's played Journey. Again, this one, you can see the camera is moving a little fast. It's more dynamic. The clouds are moving as well. You can't tell, but I'm pretty sure they were moving in the beginning. The water is moving, and it's really cool because it's, again, like the aspect ratio is more like a phone as well. So that's another thing you can play with, is like the aspect ratio of your film. And you can change this in Adobe Premiere as well when you were taking out the rendering. But this is an example of like how moving through the game can still feel nice, but soft and slow at the same time, if you want to replicate that look. And then obviously awesome to do different lighting settings, changing the vibe of the environment a bit. This person's work is just so amazing because I love how the camera is still. There's no camera movement, but there's just so much happening in the grass. And this person can get away with like a lot of movement because it's just grass and it's very soft, very easy on the eyes. There's a lot of variation as well, not a lot of repetition. You can see that there's some moving here and then it changes the way it flows. And then again, you can see the clouds panning in the background, the trees moving very softly here. The animation is there, but it's not too overpowering. So definitely a really good example of how you can do grass animation into your scene. And then again, like when you're picking concepts, think about what you can animate. Now I went through grass, I went through environment, particles, all that. But there's also like little objects that you can animate that aren't necessarily architectural, but more props. For example, the screen. You could have it flicker through material, like using emissive. There's a lot of like tutorials online on how to animate screens, on how to get like lights to flicker. You can see that there's some God rays coming in, there's some dust particles floating. It's just very soft, and you can imagine like some light rays kind of moving with some grass, or sorry, some trees outside. So you can also animate those things. And then you can kind of tell a story as well, like, oh, it's abandoned, or somebody actually lives here. And if, say, like, you can add a coffee mug and there's like steam coming out of it to show that somebody actually lives there. Or if you want to make it look abandoned, the screen can be off. There's like some wind flowing, making some papers flow in the distance. That makes it look abandoned. So just by changing your animation, you can just give a completely different vibe or different story to your environment. So yeah, this was also really great work done by the same person who did the grass. I just think that this was so cool, so different. Again, camera's not moving, but your clouds, and I was actually inspired by the clouds this person did, because they're like so beautiful and so painterly, but just panning slowly in the back. The flags are moving as well, and then these people are just walking, and it seems like a lot of work to add this, but I feel like it really paid off for this environment, because it just told so much story. And like, having just like the horse moving its head, the tails are swinging, the dog's barking. There's like so many animations happening here, and it's just beautifully done. I feel like this person did a latest one that was inspired by Arcane, I believe. This one was more stylized. Again, I feel like they really like to add stories into their environments, and it feels like a painting, like a living painting. And that is the style that this person just has by looking at their pieces. So that's the other thing, is like when you are working on your portfolio, you can have a specific style and you can keep working on that style, keep growing in that style. And then somebody looks at your work, they're like, oh, I know this person's work because they have this particular style. And that's what I've tried to do with my work, is when I am animating things, I make sure I do it very artistically, but very softly. I try to use a lot of colors, and that's just how I like to do things. But you can also have a particular style to your art pieces. So yeah, and like the other thing is when you are going through ArtStation, and you're looking for concepts, just kind of like see what would draw attention through movement. Because I feel like movement is one of those things that comes at the end, but if you try to make it like a really essential part of your project early on, it pays off. It does a lot of, it really brings your environment to the next level, because you want to stand out as well. Like you want to have your own kind of story. So if you're kind of browsing, you're like, hey, I want to make the concept, but I don't know what to make. For example, this one. And you're like, okay, I want to try something different. You can see right away, like when I look at this concept, like the eyes would be like blinking, moving around, looking here and there. These like little tentacles would be like floating in the air. There's like a plane going by, and just doing that is going to draw so much attention. And I think that on LinkedIn especially, movement draws way more attention than still images, or even just like having the camera pan into your environment. I feel like is being done quite a lot because it's really easy to do that. But now just having actual movement and things actually moving in your scene will catch way more attention. And you want that. You want people to see your work, even if it's like on LinkedIn or Instagram, because the kind of industry we're in right now, we have to make sure you exist. You want to make sure people know your work, because if nobody knows your work, it's hard to, like, it's all about contacts and like knowing this person exists so you can get hired. And in order to know that, to be known, you want to make sure you do works that grab the person's attention. But at the same time, you want to do something that you really enjoy working on as well. But yeah, like really look at concepts that tell a story as well. It really makes a difference by selecting the right concept or the right idea in mind. It doesn't even have to be a concept art from somebody. It could also be something that you had in mind, or like you really like this little, let's say you like this little house that you always see every day, and you're like, oh, I really want to make this in 3D. Obviously, don't just make the exact same house, but you're like, hey, I could imagine a story here. What kind of animations or what kind of movements will I think of adding into that scene in particular? So yeah, that's pretty much what I would say about the adding movement. Just to summarize, it's best to keep it slow, well-paced. Sometimes, like I said, no camera movement might even be better. Having close-up shots help show more of your work and attention to detail. And I noticed that there's a lot of beautiful work on ArtStation, but it's just like one angle and that's it. Like it doesn't really go deeper into showing more shots of your scene. And totally understandable if you made a small diorama, for example, like how many more angles are you going to show of that. But if you created a large scene, it's really good to like focus on a few props. Like I knew that these succulents I made would need to be close up. So that's why they're a little bit more higher fidelity. And I made sure that it looked good up close, because again, like you want to make sure that anything that you're showing up close, especially if your camera is moving up close to it, you want to make sure that it looks good enough. So I had to make sure these were like a bit of higher fidelity. If I had these like extremely low poly, like I don't know if I want to like show a very zoomed in detail of that. And yeah, and then these were just like some camera values to keep in mind, like just to summarize again, keyframe movements, make sure that you are also playing with your focal length, because it adds a bit of blurriness or like some cinematic feel to your camera. And then changing your keyframes from cubic to linear. I personally think this should be a practice for everybody, because that ease in, ease out really breaks away from that professional look that you can get through camera movements, because everybody has that like a cubic auto selected, and it just looks more professional if you keep it linear, because exactly what you wanted was like start at this speed and end at this speed. And then again, summarizing again, like the particle systems, make sure you save your particle systems, and you could easily migrate your particle system to another project. So what I did was like anything I did for this one, I would take from my elf project. And you can easily just like, for example, say you want to migrate the wind, you can easily migrate it into a new project. So let's select it here and right click, asset actions, export, migrate, and then this is going to go into your other project, and then you can just keep editing it however you want. So building a library of particle systems and materials, anything that's moving is so essential because it saves so much time and it's so worth doing in the long run. So yeah, I feel like I went through everything. There was a few other projects that I felt like could really, I really felt like they were extremely well done. For example, this one was, I honestly thought this was a painting because like they used a stylized shader and like an outline shader, but here you can see that it's actually all in 3D. Again, I just love how the lights are turning on and off. I also love how they alternate. They're not just like blinking on and off. There's like candle animation here, it's like in the material, and then there's like this wind kind of like blowing that window over here. And the camera is so soft, so like slow, and I just think this is perfect. There's also like some dust particles floating in the air. So, and then, you know, to enhance this further, you could even have like these pots kind of moving in the wind, but you can see that these leaves are alive a little. So yeah, just keeping it soft and simple is really, really essential to any project that you make. Also, like if you want to take it the next step, you can add some music at the back, but I really recommend keeping things very soft because your focus is to show your skills, but at the same time, you want it to come to life. So yeah, and let's see what else. One thing I didn't really mention was like when it comes to foliage, it's really great to have animation in like trees if it's like really windy. But again, this one, I wouldn't say you should do just in the shader, but like the actual tree itself can be rotating about the axis, and that usually comes from the rotate about node. And if you just Google like, YouTube trees moving in the wind, you should be able to see like where the whole tree kind of moves with the wind, and it's not just like your leaves floating in the air. And when you do happen to animate your leaves, make sure you're masking out areas that you don't want it to move. Because sometimes I see like there is the grass shader, but it's like applied and there's no masking. It's not, the whole leaf is just moving. And I'm also sometimes guilty of that because like you're short in time, you're like, oh, whatever, just get it in. But really beneficial to add a vertex mask in your leaf. So to make sure that it's not just like the whole thing moving. So yeah, and then just think about different materials like water. Again, I just thought this was so beautifully done because there's water flowing, and then it was raining as well, and then you also had your birds kind of flying, and they actually go all the way around as well, which I just thought was awesome. The way the camera is moving, it represents like somebody kind of walking into the scene, which I think is new as well, because a lot of people kind of do the ease in, ease out. But this one's, you can see the person's actually kind of walking in, feels like a game. And at the same time, it's drawing attention to this area with movement and, you know, the birds kind of flying in the distance. And again, like same project, a lot of wind going on here. It's a lot of tree movements. The whole scene is like very lively and reminds you of like an actual game. And I just love how there's just two completely different shots as well. So you can make a lot out of just one scene and really like engage the person who's like looking at your art station. Like again, there's another shot, which I think is just amazing because it's not just the same shot again and again. It's like, okay, here's another shot, like here, because they use the same grass, same assets, but in a different setting. And like also just kind of like guiding the player where to look. is really important as well. And then, yeah, like this one is, I feel like it's the best shot because it's just really nice, feels like it's alive. And then there's a lot of more foreground movement happening here, but then in the distance, it kind of like fades off. It's not moving as much, which I think is fine, but then you just have these windmills to contrast that. So yeah, movement, not just in like one angle, but multiple shots really pays it off. And it's all kind of in one post, so it's such a nice thing to click on. You're like, oh wait, there's more and there's more, and it like really builds like a good impression on anybody who's looking at your profile. All right, I think I'm pretty much summarized everything. I would love to answer any questions that anybody has. And yeah, I hope that everybody found this useful for their project. I really would love to see whatever you folks end up making and adding like the movement and story in your project.
Hey everyone, Timothy Dries here, founder of Beyond Extend. Thank you so much to Zehra for coming on and sharing their own experience. It's been great to see how you approach how to add movement into your own scenes and help elevate other people's personal projects as well. And that is also our mission here at Beyond Extend. We want to help you take things to the next level, and the best way to do that is as a member of our lovely community. Your support does mean a lot, and it helps us build better resources and more of them for the future. So anything you can help us in support of that mission, whether it's subscribing, sharing it with friends, or even becoming a member yourself, it's all greatly appreciated and will help us a lot as well. Thank you so much.